Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. You are tuned in to Raven International TV Network, where it's all about lifestyle, health, and wealth. And you know what? We love to bring the experts, the influencers, the top leaders in the industry to come on and share their insider secrets with you. And sometimes share their brand new show that they're launched either on this network or Apple Podcasts. Because I do believe the power of your voice and your heartfelt message will change the world one show or one interview at a time. And speaking of leaders, this is all about leaders. This is the month we celebrate a great civil rights leader by the name of Martin Luther King. And we have our guest right next to me here, Dr. Karen. She is going to do a special segment, week-long segment to honor and celebrate the works of Dr. Martin Luther King. And you don't want to miss this. Now, the name of her show is Voice of Leadership. She's launching it that week. And how better to launch it, Dr. Karen, than with Martin Luther King and all the great things he did? What made you choose him to do your show about?
Raven, Dr. Martin Luther King has been one of my absolute favorite people for a long time. And one of the reasons is I really love his inspiration. He had the ability to speak in a way that was very visual and to inspire people, to move them to act. And so each day of this special, I'm really focusing on a different aspect of his leadership style, the way he talked, the way he painted word pictures, his inclusive language, the way he included not only African-American people, but all people in the vision. And, he was able to overcome tremendous odds and to be courageous and keep moving anyway. So I think there are aspects about that journey that really are relevant for workplace leaders today, because we still have to be courageous every day.
Absolutely. And like many, I'm a big fan of Martin Luther King, always will be. He's one of those people that are definitely gone, but not forgotten. He has changed. He changed the world so much time when he was alive, but he continues to change the world even though he's gone. Isn't that amazing how we have the power within us to leave our legacy as big as we want to leave it and change lives way beyond our years? I just love that. I think that's something we can all get excited about. Despite what we've done in the past, we still have so much in our future. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I very much feel strongly about that. You're right about leaving legacy. Like, for example, in his case, he had to make some choices and decisions about being a principled leader. And one of his principles was nonviolent leadership, even though he was opposed on so many fronts with violence. And so it was difficult because he had to make choices about, we're not going to fight back with guns. We're not going to fight back with physical weapons. And his probably greatest weapon that he used was actually divine power. And that's another thing that I love about him as well.
I'm so excited. I didn't even welcome you to the show. Welcome to the show, Dr. Karen. We're thrilled to have you, really. This subject just got me so fired up. I dived right in, but we definitely want to honor you for the stuff that you're doing. And we feel so blessed to have you on our show. And I got to tell you, from lady to lady that loves to dress up, girl, you're looking good in red. I love those red flowers and stuff you be
Thank you.
So thank you for being part of our show today. The month of January, we celebrate him and his works. But, I think leaders like Martin Luther King, it's great to celebrate them on their birthday or sometimes celebrate them the day that they pass. But it's also really good for us to hold them in celebration throughout the year. And the best way we can hold them in celebration, I believe, and I'd love to get your thoughts on, is to follow their lead. Is to implement and not just honor, but implement the things that they fought and, in his case, died for.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, there are two aspects beyond what I've already mentioned that I think are important as well. He was a type of person who learned a lot from role models, and especially at home. He learned a lot from his father. He learned a lot from his mother. And even at the time when he grew up, even in the, way back in the day, in the 40s and so on, his father was a force to be reckoned with. He did not allow people to just talk to him any kind of way. He stood up for himself. So he taught Dr. Martin Luther King that from a very young age. He also was someone who was a continuous learner. And in today's workplace, you really have to continue to learn. You have to continue to develop yourself. And
Yeah.
he learned broadly. He read a lot of different people, whether he agreed with them or not. It just broadened his perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I know we're making this week about Martin Luther King, but also, we got to celebrate and honor the fact that you are launching your show, your very first show on the internet, right? From what I understand, you did some radio in the past before?
Well, in the past, I used to do a television segment years
Oh,
ago.
okay. Awesome.
And it was a local segment here in the Colorado Springs area on KKTV called Ask Dr. Karen. And so that aired probably weekly for about a 3-year period.
Wow. So what made you decide to do a podcast?
I think that many leaders today are actually accessing information through the podcast format. One, because it's easy. They can take it where they're going. It's portable. You don't have to watch it. You can just listen to it. And in my case, the podcast is relatively short because my objective is to give people practical, actionable tips that they can implement in their business immediately, right away today. So the practical part, I think, is important. Leaders are looking for something that's going to work with their people right now.
Yeah, I love that. 5 minutes is the time that your intentions for the show. And I got to ask you, because many people are like me, they do 30, 45-minute, hour-long shows. I think it's just because we like to talk. But I love the fact that yours is very bite-sized. So no matter how a person is rushing and their life gets busy, they can stop and listen to your amazing show. 5 minutes is great. What made you go with the 5 minutes segments?
Exactly what you're talking about, so that there would be no barrier to entry. If you say it's an hour long, it's like, oh, I don't have an hour, I'm really busy. Everyone can carve out 5 minutes. And in general, the shows are about 5 minutes, but for the specials, like the Martin Luther King special, it may be slightly longer, maybe as long as 8 minutes, but really still short.
Yeah.
And you can just listen and then still get on with your life, have your inspiration for the day, your one tip that you can implement. So for me, it's all about getting people in action and sharing something that's practical.
So our listeners that are listening to our podcast and watching our TV network right now, Dr. Karen, they can get Voice of Leadership. Is that correct? Voice of Leadership. Yes. They can get that podcast on Apple, and it's on demand listening. And like you said, that's great because everybody's busy. And so now they don't have to worry about listening to you at a certain time. They can go 24/7, Monday through Sunday, right?
Exactly. And let me say this. The show is actually called The Voice of Leadership.
Okay.
And they can get it at the iTunes store. And for those who are much more, maybe less Apple-based, they can also look it up on CastBox, for the Android types. Mm-hmm. Or they can go to my website under the resource section and under podcast, and that's www.transleadership.com, and they can access the shows there as well. And starting in February, we'll be uploading a new show every Tuesday and every Thursday. And occasionally we'll do specials that run a whole week like we're doing with Dr. Martin Luther King.
Awesome. The Voice of Leadership. Yes. On Apple Podcasts and the many different ways that you can listen to it. And I know you can just hit Alexa or Siri when it comes on and say, hey, I want to listen to The Voice of Leadership podcast, and it'll come right up.
Yes, with Dr. Karen Wilson Starks. I got to make sure to say that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Actually, by just saying the name of your podcast, it should come right up. Because here's the thing with Siri and Alexa: if you give them too much, they'll be like, "I can't find that."
Okay.
Yeah. So you guys check her out in the many ways and follow the links that we have on our page as well and on our podcast on Apple, and it'll take you right there by the time this gets out. Okay, so we know that you're going to do the week-long special celebration and segment on Martin Luther King, but also, like you said, they're going to catch new shows every Tuesday. So what can a long-term listener expect every time they come grab that 5 to 10 minutes or less podcast that you've created?
Sometimes it'll be just something to help them shift mindset. One of the
Oh, that's a
things
good
that
one.
I've noticed is that a lot of times people might be in a mind place that
Hmm.
actually stops them from their next step to innovation or creativity. So, one of the things I often ask my clients, for example, is what can you do from your chair? And one of the things I've noticed is that people often in the workplace today feel very disempowered, and they're often thinking, I can't move, or I can't do something new because somebody else has got to do X first. So when
Yeah.
you listen to the podcast, you'll find out what can you do next, where you are, even if things are not perfect. What's your next best step? Let's say you wanted to build trust in the workplace. Well, how do you provide feedback, let's say, how do you establish ground rules with a group that you're regularly communicating with so that you develop a way of moving through conflict and communicating that inspires trust? So that would be an example of something practical.
Love it. Okay. Inquiring Minds wants to know your definition of the voice of leadership. What exactly is that?
Well, the voice of leadership, in part, it's about, I'll say, wisdom that I've acquired and learned over a lot of years in the workplace. And I've worked in all sectors, and particularly in corporate consulting and leadership for more than 30 years. So that's a lot of experience that
Hmm.
I'm able to share back. So that voice is really a compilation of many voices over time. And periodically we will channel sort of a voice from the past, such as a Dr. Martin Luther King, because that's an evergreen voice that's still speaking to us today.
Yeah. What are some of the traits or benefits well, let's scratch the benefits. What are some of the traits that you feel you picked up of Dr. Martin Luther King that you passed on as a leader?
One would be the courage to stand up for something that's difficult, even
Mm.
when it might cost you personally, but to be willing to do the right thing, even if it's expensive and at personal cost. One of the things I also learned from him is to really have a life of service. He could have gone in a lot of different directions. He was a very intelligent, very educated, and smart man, and he chose to go into the ministry because he felt that as a pastor, he would able to have more of a life of service and to impact more people by doing that. That was important to me. And his spiritual direction is really it's like right at the center of my own being and my own heart because I'm also a spiritually based person. So, for example, there would be times he didn't know how he was going to go from one day to the next, and things looked very bleak. And he would pray to God in those moments, and God would give him revelation about his
Mm.
next step that he could then share with those people who were following him. So, those
Oh,
are at least
wow.
three things that I personally benefit from in terms of his life.
Absolutely. Wow. That's amazing. Okay. So I know you've got so much coming up. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, of what's to come in 2019. So before we close out, why don't you share with the listeners a little bit more about how you can help them in their development of leadership and maybe a couple things that you've got coming up beyond your
Okay.
celebration of Martin Luther King?
Wonderful. I have a book that's called Lead Yourself First, the Senior Leader's Guide to Engaging Your People for Greater Performance and Impact. And the reason I mention that book is because that's what I'm about, is helping my clients figure out how they can first develop themselves and then develop the people who they are leading and who are following them. And so if someone wants to go deeper, they just need to reach out and contact me because I'm in a consulting business where that's what we're all about is figuring out what's your next best step to leading you and then leading your people more effectively in the workplace. So coming up, for example, another series that I have coming up, I'm going to take lessons from my book and actually be sharing some of those. So for
Oh.
example, I was an active duty Army officer. So as I'm sure you can imagine, being in the Army, you're always taking the hill, doing tough jobs,
Hmm.
tough experiences, things that were frightening at times. And so I would like to share with people what does it take, for example, to rappel off of a hill or a mountain when you're frightened and you are thinking about how am I going to get this done? There are some things you need to have in place. So I'm going to be covering those kind of points in the series as well.
For those people that are really, really trying to reach and become better leaders, there's an old saying that leader of one, leader of many. If you can't lead one, you can't lead any. So for those that have been striving to be a great leader in their industry and they seem to fall short just about that much, what type of encouragement can you throw out that will help uplift them and encourage them? Don't give up. Keep going.
Yeah, what I would say is this. Each one of you is gifted and talented with special abilities. And so part of what we do is we identify what are those special gifts and talents that make you the instrument of your leadership. And when you're thinking about an instrument, whether it's a musical instrument or a surgical instrument or whatever it might be, instruments have to be kept in tune and have to be kept in shape. So if something is not quite on point, something seems to be a little bit rusty, it's all a matter of tuning up. It's all a matter of practice. And one of the greatest things I do with my clients is I help them to practice what those next best steps are so that when they go live in the real workplace, they're showing up the way they want to show up and they're getting work done the way they want to get it done. So be encouraged. Practice helps.
There you go. All I want to say to the listeners and viewers is run, don't walk. Follow Dr. Karen today. Listen to her show on Apple Podcasts and all the different platforms it'll be on. Remember, it's only 5 to 10 minutes out of your day. So it's quick, easy listening. You can listen from the car. You can listen from your phone. You can listen online. There's so many different ways to listen. Why miss this? All of us thrive to be better leaders in this world. Leaders as moms or dads or, even no matter what role you play to your relatives, you are a leader. You're a leader in your household. You're a leader in your business and industry. So leadership I believe, is inside of all of us. And that's why I love the voice of leadership because it's there. You just got to unleash it and let it go and let it flow. And remember, our good, bad, and the darn right ugly of our journey is meant to pass on those lessons. How do you feel about that, Dr. Karen? And go ahead and take a minute and just close us out.
Absolutely. Everything that we go through is designed to help us be able to take the next step more effectively and to inspire the next person. So, for example, one of the things, the paper that my business cards is printed on is actually kind of rough in the way it feels because life is not smooth. You're going to go over some potholes. And going over those potholes, that's the way to get to success. So just consider the potholes as part of the journey. And when you navigate and negotiate those successfully, you have something to share with the next person about how to do it because life is not always easy. So I would say, yes, join me. Find me on my website, www.transleadership.com. I'm also on Facebook, Dr. Karen Y. Wilson Starks, and also on LinkedIn, Dr. Karen Wilson Starks. And I would love to hear from you. If there's something that you want me to talk about as far as leadership, I'm just inviting you. Send me a message. Let me know what that is. We'll develop a show around that too.
Hey, there you have it. Our amazing women of power that we're saluting today right here on Raven International TV is none other than Dr. Karen Wilson Starks. I got to get all those names in there, so follow her. The name of her show is The Voice of Leadership. She's available to come out and speak to your corporations. She's available to be part of your telesummits, teleconferences, and to be featured on your radio, podcast, or web TV show. Just call her. How can they be in touch with you? Can you give out your number or email?
Yes, they can give me a call at 719-534-0949, extension 1.
There you
And
have it, guys. This is a wrap. I'm Raven, the talk show maven, and there she is again, Dr. Karen Y. I'm gonna get this name Wilson Starks. We appreciate you. Join us next time on the Raven International TV Network, and please share us with a friend.